The 10 plagues in human consciousness, according to the wisdom of Kabbalah and inner Chassidic teachings. The 10 plagues are not merely historical events, but states of consciousness that a person undergoes in life, especially when striving to uncover spiritual reality. The plagues are designed to release a person from Egypt, a state of spiritual and emotional distortion, where materialism and physicality dominate, into a state of spiritual freedom. Each plague addresses a specific distortion in the individual and connects them to spiritual correction through refining character traits and interpreting reality through inner awareness. The plague of blood, Malchut, kingdom. The distortion, the kingdom of Egypt, represents spiritual silence and inner laziness, where a person feels devoid of vitality. The plague, when the waters of life turn into blood, the person realizes there is no true vitality. In Egypt materialism, the correction to discover that true vitality comes from the Israel within the connection to the soul. Plague of frogs, Yesod, foundation, the distortion. A distorted intellect leads to arrogance, excessive talking, and an inability to listen to others or reality. The plague, the frog, represents Tzipor-Da, bird of knowledge, negative knowledge, infiltrating every aspect of life, emphasizing how uncontrolled negative speech overtakes a person. The correction, guarding the covenant, learning to listen to others and achieving inner balance. Plague of lice, Had, splendor. The distortion, a focus on excessive details that breaks apart the whole. The person fixates on insignificant details and cannot see the bigger picture. The plague, lice, symbolize incessant mental disturbances, petty thoughts that prevent unity and clarity. The correction, rising above the details to focus on the whole, building an internal temple from a place of unity. Plague of wild animals, Netzach, eternity. The distortion, a constant sense of lack, spiritual hunger and dissatisfaction, a feeling of insatiable emptiness. The plague represents an overwhelming sense of consumption and yet remaining empty. The correction, to view life from the inside, focusing on spiritual fulfillment rather than external appearances. Plague of pestilence, Tiferet. The distortion, emotions that are disconnected from spiritual ideals, lead to emotional exhaustion and depression. The plague, the death of livestock, symbolizes the collapse of emotional vitality when it serves only material desires. The correction, aligning emotions with spiritual truth, valuing authenticity and purpose over superficiality. Plague of boils, Gevura, strength. The distortion, a lack of boundaries, creates chaos and a sense of lawlessness. The plague, boils, represent the inner turmoil of needing boundaries but resisting them. This tension highlights the necessity of self-discipline. The correction, setting clear boundaries, distinguishing between right and wrong, sacred and mundane. Plague of hail, Chesed, kindness. The distortion, oversensitivity, and mixed emotions, including anger and sadness. The plague, hail, combining fire and water, represents overwhelming and conflicting feelings that flood the person. The correction, recognizing that emotions arise for refinement and not allowing them to control life uncontrollably. Plague of locusts, Baina, understanding. The distortion, distorted thoughts and sinking into incorrect perceptions. The plague, the locusts devour all crops, symbolizing the destruction of misguided intellectual growths a person has built. The correction, escaping distorted thoughts through proper and truthful contemplation. The plague of locusts, according to Kabbalah, and the inner meaning of the Torah. Plague of locusts, Arbe, has the numerical value gematria of zar, stranger, with the kollel, inclusive count. This means that the locust represents the covering of the eye of the land, ayin, haaretz. The word arbe is related to harbe, many, symbolizing a multitude of details that obscure the general principle, the inner essence. The plague of locusts comes to reveal to a person the distortions of the klipa, spiritual shell, within, so that he may correct them. For the Egyptian, this plague was suffering, but for the Israelite within a person, it was a rectification, similar to how the wicked are sealed for death on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. That is, a person must put to death the wicked elements within him, so that the righteous parts of his soul may be sealed for life. Who are the wicked within a person? They are his selfish desires, the desires to receive for oneself alone. When a person builds his entire Torah and mitzvot upon self-interest, whether for material pleasure in this world or in the world to come, whether for acquiring more wealth rather than for purifying his desire to receive and aligning it with the Creator, then he is struck by the plague of locusts. What does the locust plague do? It destroys all crops, all produce, and all fields, from the term man of the field, everything that man built externally. The locust is a correction against the sphere of understanding, all growth, all depths, everything man built. The locust has a big appetite against man's appetite for external possessions in Torah and commandments instead of working on inner spirituality, love of others, God and man. Others from the term cheap, your friend, from the term bad, as the true eye, the secret of the palm of eye. Man has locusts. When he has an endless appetite, he is never satisfied with Torah and commandments, becomes stricter and stricter, but forgets about the inner point about the soul. Therefore, here comes the plague of locusts, and eats all his Torah commandments, all his understandings in Torah and commandments, all his greatness to force him to rebuild everything on a foundation of contemplation, in awe of elevation, in the greatness of the Creator. For the Egyptian, it's a plague. Why? Because they took all his external Torah and commandments, showed him they are just external. A commandment without intention is like a body without a soul. But if man connects to his inner Israeli, to his Hebrew that sees beyond matter, aspect of crossing the Jordan sees beyond descent, then in such a state they actually acquire faith, acquire the power of understanding, contemplation, power of imagination to reach form equivalence, and then this appetite, instead of eating and destroying everything, on the contrary, it magnifies the vision of the King. May we merit to break the distortion, break the shells, and all this multiplication of external intellect in Torah and commandments, and external Torah study like artificial intelligence will turn for us into a plague of locusts, which is against understanding, that shows us that wisdom without kindness cannot exist. And then we will rebuild in the aspect of bread of laziness you shall not eat, all the crop, and produce of the field return, and put faith in it, amen and amen. Plague of darkness, chokmah, wisdom, the distortion. A person reaches the pinnacle of material achievements, but feels a deep emptiness. The spiritual darkness. There is great light, but the person cannot perceive it. The correction. To realize that true light comes from connecting to divinity, not materialism. Plague of the firstborn. Keter, crown. The distortion, absolute egoism, where a person views themselves as the center of everything, leading to disconnection from the source of life. The consequence. This egoism leads to existential despair. The correction. To recognize that everything belongs to the Creator, to surrender oneself out of love, rather than despair. The 10 plagues. As a spiritual process, the 10 plagues represent a spiritual journey designed to free a person from the confines of their inner Egypt, a materialistic mindset toward a spiritual, divine consciousness. Each plague exposes an internal distortion and offers an opportunity for correction and growth. The path to leaving Egypt lies in connecting to the inner Israel, transforming the plagues into tools for building faith and spiritual elevation.
I am the rabbi known as Rabbi Kabbalah for Beginners. Please share the video, comment, and give it a like to help spread the knowledge to the public.